Hi, I'm Naomi Murphy, and this is the Locked Up Living podcast, where we talk with a wide range of people about harsh aspects of institutional life.
We also explore some of the ways to overcome them and to grow and develop. I'm David Jones. So join us every Wednesday morning, 6 o'clock UK time, for a fresh podcast. Cllr Noel Hadjimichael is a seasoned professional with a diverse background in government, education and public policy. He has extensive experience in roles such as Special Advisor in the Australian Parliament, CEO of Apex and Executive Director at Better Statistics CIC. Noel has demonstrated a strong commitment to public service and community engagement, and he's currently serving as a councillor for the Royal Borough of Kingston-on-Thames. Noel continues to contribute to various civil society initiatives, including the Royal United Services Institute and Chatham House.
Welcome, Noel.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're the chair of the Defence and Security Circle of the National Liberal Council. What is this body and what do you do?
Right. Well, it's probably because the National Liberal Club is a building that thousands of people walk past every day in Whitehall. It's just near Embankment Tube, and for more than 140 years it has been a private members club, originally for people like Gladstone, Asquith, young Churchill when he was a Liberal, and other people like David Lloyd George, that scoundrel who was Prime Minister. It now is a community of 2,500 people. It's still a private members club, but they don't look like me. They don't even look like you, Naomi. They're mostly in their 20s, their 30s, they're young, they're in different industries. And the one thing they have in common is that they have a ideas-orientated perspective. So it's an interesting place in central London.
So how did this diverse group of people come about?
Well, the Defence and Security Circle started in the pandemic because I noticed that, having been involved in think tanks, and I'm to use the old Cold War language, I'm very much a Cold War liberal. I'm somebody who has worked in government, has worked in the military, has worked in education, and with the pandemic, everything froze, everything stopped. So what I thought was important was for the people who were still working, especially younger people, I call anyone under 40 young, there needed to be a place, a bit like a Switzerland of Whitehall, for everyone to come together. So I created the idea. We started with a world expert, a cutting-edge war correspondent, war reporter, and myself, and we had 20 people online. And then we started having other events. People were at home, people were bored, people were frustrated, and then Sir David Omand, former National Security Advisor, was kind enough to come and do what I have to say was a very sexy talk, How Spies Think. We got nearly 200 people that night, and all of a sudden we created a community. And what I found was the community wasn't like me. It was of different ages, of different backgrounds, and people were coming together to listen, to learn, but also to engage. And when you could, subsequently, we started doing things in person as well.
I know when we spoke previously, Noel, you spoke about, you went into more detail really about how diverse the group is. And I think there's really something quite special about how you've managed to gather such an eclectic group of people together. Yeah. And I wondered if you could say a little bit more about it.
Of course. Well, I was so pleased that I used to go, and still do, to places like Chatham House, the Foreign Office think tank, and RUSI, the Ministry of Defence's think tank, and I'd go to Peter Apps's Labour-orientated crowd, and I'd go and I'd be the one person in the suit standing at the back, and then I'd go to Alan Mendoza's more right-of-centre group, Henry Jackson, and I'd be the somewhat mainstream, middle-of-the-road person there. But the interesting thing was people were often talking to the same people like themselves or speaking to their own tribe. And because the National Liberal Club's membership, and because my professional life, what I do, I'm involved in civil society, I've always been involved in bringing people together in the jobs I've had, it was natural to invite people who were different but had something to offer. So you've got people who are civil servants, military officers, police officers, people in politics, both elected and unelected. You've got people in media, but you've got somebody who sings at the Royal Opera. You have people who are venture capitalists. You have people who are different shades of liberal, and you've got, the Caroline Lucas, the Tom Tugendhat hat type people. So you've got people from every flavour of the ice cream, but there's one really interesting thing. There's a common golden thread, and it's what I've experienced in my working and personal life. It's the national interest. Everyone is on Team GB, and it's refreshing to see the 27-year-old from the Cabinet Office go up to the Brigadier General, who's a very impressive woman, and they're talking as equals and they're listening to each other. And that doesn't happen in the day job, but it happens at our events, which are invariably after 5. So you're sort of still on duty, but you're sort of off duty. And that's very important.
I think you're highlighting something really important in that, Noel, because I think certainly with both David and I having worked in prisons often feel like a bit of a silo, and you feel like you're talking to quite a narrow community. And also I've found that since leaving my job working in a prison, that quite often I get presented with networking opportunities to interact with other psychologists or other health professionals, but actually I often feel like my knowledge is broadened by talking to people from totally different walks of life. And I think really that's what we've tried to do with the podcast, is have people on that have something to offer that does have some bearing on the criminal justice system or other institutions, but we're drawing on tangential knowledge rather than direct knowledge. So I think it's amazing what you've managed to do in bringing such a diverse group. And I wondered, what's the secret to how do you bring people with such eclectic views together? Because people spend good money with initiatives trying to do this in organisations, don't they?
Well, yes, because I've been in the military. I've been in what we call in Australia the public service, but here it's the civil service in the United Kingdom. I've been in institutions like what you would call a non-Russell university, seen how badly institutions tackle things, not because of a lack of will, not because they don't have their heart in it, but they're tackling it, I think, often from a tick-the-box compliance mentality or a quick. We need to do something this financial year, this reporting year, to show that we've been innovative. I was very lucky. I made sure that I was surrounded. I'm the old white guy, and I'm surrounded by a half a dozen people who are all but one of them very much younger than me. I have 4 fantastic vice chairs. That's not because I want to give people titles. It's because I want to give people responsibilities. The group has organically evolved this so that it's not one person's vision, it's not one person's Napoleonic, I know what I'm doing strategy. Yes, I've probably been driving the bus, but I've had a team of people with a roadmap which they've been creating as we've been driving down the road. We've tried different things. We've realised that you can't have it one size fits all. So most of our events are absolutely free. It's 50 people in a room. It lasts an hour. You turn up at 6. If you turn up half an hour earlier, you buy your own drink. We're very, very good at helping the National Liberal Club improve its bottom line. And that is very much an English way of doing things, very much a British way of doing things. But you finish at, say, 7. So it's a very self-contained. You can catch that train to Winchester or Cheltenham or Oxfordshire. You can go home on the bus or the tube. But we've also toyed, we've tested, and we've persevered with other models. We've brought a subject matter expert. We've had a North Atlantic, let's say, maritime challenge, an ambassador from one of the Scandinavian countries, and we brought together 24 people, hand-picked, to listen to the ambassador and to engage. We had a psychological warfare review of Hamas and Israel's operations. We invited 28 people, 27 turned up. So people knew that they weren't just being invited to fill a seat, they were there for purpose. So what I find interesting is that the audience often feels that they themselves are playing a valuable and valid role. They're not there because their bosses told them to go there. They're not there because it's going to look good on their LinkedIn profile or on their resume. They're there because they're driven by a desire to learn, to listen, but importantly, to engage. Yes, there is networking. Yes, it doesn't hurt your career. Yes, you might bump into somebody who might take you down another road, another corridor in life. I've had 5 members of the group join the full-time armed forces. I've had more than 5 join the reserves. That's not the reason why we're doing it, but they've come to a personal decision that circumstances are such that they want to add value. I've had also people reconsider what they do in society and maybe refocus into things that are more valuable in these difficult times. And that's incredibly satisfying. In some ways, I am the uncle at the wedding, taking great pride in seeing the younger generation getting together. And it does work if you set the right culture.
Thank you, Noel. I wonder if you can just clarify a few things for me. So you meet in the Liberal Club, but you're not a part of the Liberal Party. Is that right?
Yes, that's true, that it's when we physically meet, except occasionally when we, as I say, go on tour, but most of the time we meet at number 1 Whitehall Place in a beautiful Victorian Edwardian style building that the Luftwaffe did only limited damage to in the Second World War. I think more damage was done by the Canadian Army, who took over the building in both World Wars, because I think they played cricket in our smoking room with real balls and real bats. So that was an interesting experience. So physically, we're in London, but we have been to Manchester, we've been to Edinburgh, where we very much try to say that we are very open. We've done a lot of hybrid events so that sometimes you've got someone from Toronto, Tokyo, from Delhi, from Denmark, you name it, they're zooming in to be part of the engagement. But the club itself has historical links to liberalism and historical links to the Liberal Democrats. But the club's membership, and in particular the Defence and Security Circle, is non-partisan. We have people involved in all the democratic parties, from the Greens to the Conservatives, and we have a significant, possibly I'd say a clear majority of people who have an interest but have no active involvement in politics because of their job, or because, as my wife would say, they're very sensible, they've kept away from it. I myself am in the Liberal Democrats. I'm the national chair of the Armed Forces Group. So it's very interesting that what I do for Britain with the DSC is mirrored by what I'm doing in a political party in support of the armed forces. There are people just like me in the Labor Party, in the Conservative Party, people in public life, who have a genuine respect and regard for the forces, and we do our work in democracy. But this, the DSC, is for everyone. And we never set up barriers for participation. We've made it free to participate unless we go to dinner, and we've ensured that it's a space that is dignified. It doesn't mean it can't be robust. We have some tough questions, we have some tough conversations, and that's a good thing.
Thank you. And so I gather from what you're saying that you arrange a series of meetings or forums where you have a particular subject or topic, and you may invite a subsection of the membership, or you may invite the whole membership. Is that more or less
correct.
The format?
We have over 800 people associated with the circle, but we will use social media, and it will be an at-large invitation. A good example is when recently we had a business leader from the AUKUS community, the Australian, UK, US, submarines, missiles, you name it, the major defence initiative of the last few years. Michael Sharp came out from Houston. He's a Sydney boy. He was from Houston. He came over to Scotland. He came to talk to us. We had 40, 50 people from our network, but there were 20 people from industry, people who had travelled from Cornwall, from the Midlands, from Bristol, because he couldn't get to them, but they came to us. And that, I was proud as a Briton, because it showed the seriousness. We do have conversations in the national interest for the national interest. We don't shy away from tough issues. We've looked at issues that are social, environmental, very much where can Britain's national security community, Britain's national interest be strengthened. But we've also had conversations that are occasionally light-hearted. We've had Oxford and Cambridge debate, and unsurprisingly, one side won and one side lost, but they took it in good stead, and people enjoyed the fact that it was a chance to come together, deal with a serious topic, but giving younger people, I loved how there were 16 and 18-year-olds in the room who until that evening would never have thought that Oxford and Cambridge was on their radar. And they came to me and said, look, they're good, but I'm just as good as them. Now that is social mobility, opening people's eyes. Maybe because I'm an Australian, it comes naturally to me.
So it seems, Noel, that you actually do what many equality, diversity, inclusion initiative attempt to do, to be very inclusive and to get a wide range of the population as members and attenders. Was this intentional from the start or just a bit of luck?
Well, I think it's a great question. When we looked at our, let's call it backstory, we started with more than a third of our membership female. We've finished up with 40% of more than 800 female. We've started with a quarter of the audience or the team around us, people from a non-white background, and it's now well and truly into the high 30%. We've always had a significant, especially at the National Liberal Club, LGBTQ plus component. But it's not a surprise to me that we've attracted a significant number, probably well in excess of 1 in 6, who are from the community because they feel that the issues that are important to Britain. I don't ask people who they might say they work at the Home Office, or they might work at the Met, or they might work in the environment, or they're in the law, or they're a barista at King's Cross, St Pancras. I don't ask them to tick a box, but what we have done is we've shown through partnerships, we've done things with different groups. We've as I say, we've partnered up, we've hooked up with NATO, but we've hooked up with the Lavender Group, Britain's premier LGBT community from the world of intelligence. We've hooked up with scientific crowd. We've hooked up with French and German and Spanish communities. So we've tried very hard to be both passionately British but incredibly open-minded. And I think the EDI challenge is authenticity. Why are you doing it? How are you doing it? I've come from a multicultural, multiracial society with its challenges, but my backstory over the last 6 decades was always about understanding other people, working to bring people into a team, working in the national interest. I love the fact that my parents had 9 languages. I listened to everything, the French, the Greek, the Italian, the Arabic, the Russian. I can't speak any of these languages, but I understand the communities where those languages came from. The fact that my parents were incredibly open-minded people for their generation and times. They were war generation. They'd seen hard times in the 30s and 40s, and yet it did not make a difference. People of faith, people of no faith, mosque, synagogue, or church, or temple. As my father used to say, when he was in the Royal Air Force, everyone was on Team Britain. And that was a very simple, but I think a very dignified working class man's understanding of unity and of common purpose, but of also common decency. We maybe got lost post the Cold War when everybody decided to try to get rich and everyone was trying to enjoy the fruits of the peace. And we've now got ourselves into a very sticky situation where we need to have more glue between the people who live on this small set of islands and also in Europe and in the broader West.
Thank you, Noel. Why has this project been so important for you personally, do you think?
I think it came out of maybe a sense of continuity. I started my working life at 16. Not many people joined the Royal Australian Navy to become a young officer. I wanted to be a lawyer. I studied at night, I got to be a lawyer. I practiced law. I also taught law. Every job I've done has had this common theme. When we came to Britain 9 years ago, there was a real chance to reconnect, having been brought up very much as a British Australian, with a new life. It could have been very easy to just go to work and travel and enjoy life. But with privilege comes responsibility. My wife and I are very fortunate. Our children are healthy. They live on the other side of the world. We're in good health. We have good careers. We've had good education. I always joke that I married up like Prince Philip. She's a Boilermaker's daughter, and I'm just a fitter and turner's son. But we had opportunities in the post-war affluence. We had opportunities of education, travel, and good friends. And I've spent so much time with younger people in my professional life that as I saw the clouds circling 5, 6, 7 years ago, doing this was my ability to kick back, to give back. So it's in some ways incredibly humbling to be able to do this. I've seen my young generation of people in this network really blossom, and they've done very well. And I always remind them that they're doing some very heavy lifting. And I think that is important. Older people need to remind especially the under 30s, that they have got a really tough road ahead. And we should give them the comfort of listening, but also the comfort of support.
Thank you, Noel. You've given us a sort of description of the sort of rich employment and occupation history you've had. Do you think there was any particular part of that road that suited you for the role you have now, the role you've taken on?
I think all of the jobs and all of the experiences I've had have helped. I think probably the single most helpful thing was when I started in the Navy as a 16-year-old. I was very fortunate in the 1970s, and for many people that is literally the History Channel last century. There was a real sense of it didn't matter what your dad did, it didn't matter where you came from, you were on the team. Everyone was the same. And I saw that when I was working for the Governor-General of Australia in the early 2000s on an education trust program. Going to schools in places like regional Queensland, going to Islamic schools in Sydney, Lutheran schools in the Northern Territory where the Indigenous, the original inhabitants of Australia, the Aboriginal community, where the children, English was their fourth language. Working with people like that to be part of a national conversation taught me that every day I have to learn from others. And so maybe that stripping away of ego was very important. Any advice I would give to any organisation wanting to do diversity, do inclusion, do equitable outcomes successfully is to strip away the ego. I like to think that this country, my country, got it right in 1940. We pulled together out of necessity, but we actually pulled together very successfully. So unfortunately, we seem to be walking into the same zone. And, my father gave me some very good advice when I asked him the question, why did he give up a good job in 1938 to join the Royal Air Force? And he had a very simple answer. It was the right thing to do. So what I do, for me, is the right thing to do.
Thank you, Noel. And Naomi?
Yeah, sorry, just on the mic. So, Noel, with the benefit of hindsight, if you were to write an instruction manual for how to get a diverse group of people together, what would those steps be?
I think the key step is invest in a reason why you're doing this. Be incredibly candid. Don't hold the cards close to your chest. Don't make it a corporate or institutional project that has a start and end date. Make it a cultural change and listen to your audience. And your audience includes your current staff, your current stakeholders who will be impacted by this, and bring those people with you on this journey. I think one of the problems is that you never get people disagreeing with the moral reasons or the profitable reasons why you do this. But there is this questioning about authenticity and a questioning about the underlying commitment. Will it only last as long as a particular CEO is in office? Will it only last until a particular board is in power? And will the next big idea come and supplant it? I think that's probably one of the key points. People respond well to candour. People respond well to a sense of authentic dialogue.
Well, we can really hear how much you really value diversity, and I guess that's part of the problem, is that those in positions of power, that if they decide they want their organisation to be more diverse, it has to be because they genuinely value it, not for the optics and it looking good and meeting some tick box, like you say. But so maybe some people need to do some exploratory work with themselves in terms of what their own barriers to valuing difference are.
I think it's interesting that some countries do this better than others. Britain itself is a solid performer and a positive performer in so many aspects of social cohesion and integration. It's so easy to look at the negative aspects of Britain, and then when you realise how many millions of people have been successfully integrated, how Britain has had significant waves of migration going back to the Huguenots, and we've done better than probably we thought we would. We've probably done better than probably other people thought. We're very fortunate. We have the world language. No one is learning English in China to sound like somebody from Idaho. Britain's soft power, Britain's culture, it's nearly as warm-hearted as the speech from Love Actually. Britain does have some significant benefits and significant factors in its favour. But in the end, it has to be contemporary. Today's 20-year-old does not have my mindset. They've lived in a much more complex, open-minded, dramatically tech-orientated life only in the last 2 decades. They would consider racism, discrimination and unfairness to be completely and utterly foreign. But they find also a degree of belief that the system can be very cruel. People can be very hard. There can be incredible self-centeredness, and there's been a breakdown in relationships all around them. So in some ways, they've suffered because their framework maybe wasn't as supportive and as stable as my framework from my generation. So there's been positives and negatives. Today's younger person making hard choices. Should I do this? Should I do that? They've got more choice, but they've got so many more ways to have a fall, to really fall between the cracks.
You've been very positive about some of the organisations in our country, which is Great Britain, of course. But do you think there are areas where they could improve things along the lines of the thinking in your organisation?
Well, I think it's fashionable for older people to tell younger people what to do. We've tried to upturn that, and we've asked young people. And the younger people in my organisation, in my network, seem to want some clarity. They want to be heard. They want what they call work-life balance. But they're not shying away from hard work. Many of them volunteer, but they don't make a song and dance over it. They want to volunteer. They want to be involved in doing good, but on their terms, with their timetable. Blame the devices, blame the technology, but they won't go to a meeting, but they will lend a hand. I've been amazed by how public-spirited they are, and they live in their parents' second or third bedroom. They didn't get a chance to get a house like I did when I was in my 1980s. They didn't get a chance to move ahead in life. They've still got debts from their studies. They should be much, much more cranky and bitter, but, they're incredibly resilient in many ways, considering what's been thrown at them. And we've seen young people in Ukraine. We've seen young people caring for people in the pandemic. We've seen young people stepping forward, doing serious jobs. You have a scheme in Norway of national service where the great majority of relevant aged individuals actually apply for national service, and the government takes a limited number, and the government takes a higher proportion generally from minorities, because it's all about social cohesion, being involved, working together. We don't get enough opportunities to bring somebody from Chelsea and somebody from Portsmouth and somebody from Cardiff and somebody from up north together to be on the same level because they're in their tribes, they're in their geographies, they're in their schooling and education silos, and we don't get that opportunity and they don't get that opportunity. And that, to me, is shortchanging this generation.
Thanks very much indeed. And before we finish, do you have a website that people can go to?
Yes, we do to see about the club, to have a fantastic time to join, and also, as they say, be in central London. It's nlc.org.uk, but the Defence and Security Circle has nlcdefence.org.uk. It's what you would call a lowish quality, basic Greg's sausage roll type of website. We just tell you what we do. The most important thing, it's about the people. We're not selling you an idea. We're giving you an opportunity to make a new friend and to maybe take that next step in your life. And to me, that's all that's worth it.
So, of course, we'll put the link in the show notes. So thanks very much indeed, Noel.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's an incredible privilege to be interviewed by you. I was told by my team that I would have to do a good job, so I felt a great bit of pressure.
Thanks very much for joining us, Noel. Good to see you.
Okay, thank you so much.